If you were good at your job, yeah, you're in. We'll make you a whatever. Um, but getting back to the Spain thing, the trade, I think, was very important because it was a real link. I mean, it was something that happened every day, and there are stories which, I mean, because they're so persistent in the west of Ireland, that there would be hundreds, not dozens, hundreds of Spanish ships in Galway Bay at any one time. Hundreds. That you walk across them, they would say. So what were they doing? What was the trade? Well, obviously there was a lot going on. So that's and not just in Galway itself. Galway was the obvious port because it's such an obvious, it's just a blessed port. It's what Ireland has. It has some awfully good ports. We talked last week about Cork. It has only one pier in the world, and that's Sydney Harbour. There's no harbour like you couldn't. There's only two places in the world that you could literally drive in the biggest liners in the world and turn them around and drive back out again. And that's the Cork Harbour and Sydney. Now Galway isn't quite like that. It's not quite as enclosed because it doesn't come. Although you do have the islands on the outside, and it's pretty. It's even in the roughest weather, it's very mild. You can go out and fish there, but you can't go outside the islands. Once you go outside the islands, you can see the white everything breaking on the outside there. So that there's everything calms. It is calming. It has calmed down quite a bit inside there, and so has Clew Bay. The only problem with Clew Bay is it's not as deep. It gets silted up in these tiny little islands, and it doesn't go as deep in, although Black Sod Bay does, and then there's Hillary and so on. So there's quite a lot of bays on the west coast, but the big one is Galway. So the Spaniards, of course, came up and they bought and grew and things that they couldn't do down there. Like you couldn't raise sheep as intensively in Spain as you could on the hills of Ireland. You could literally cover the place there because there was so much grass, and so that the amount of and wool was an incredibly important commodity. So there was a lot of things that they raised, and cereal crops. Cereal crops probably were the thing that persisted for again thousands and thousands of years, because it's kind of why they came there originally, because they were growing cereal crops. They lived on cereal crops, and you could grow vast amounts of wheat, barley, and oats and so on in Ireland. But anyway, getting back to a little more, more modern times, the connections, the more modern connection undoubtedly got really going because of the military, because of the fact that the Irish were being conquered and disturbed, and a lot of them were leaving. Every time there was a battle, and the defeated Irish invariably went to Spain. So of course the Spanish princes, there wouldn't have been one king, but would lap them up. They were delighted. There was always a home for this, and they were always recruiting them. So there was a tremendous amount of Irish. They were almost like the Galloglass that came over from Scotland. Probably the biggest import into Ireland from Scotland is actually the Galloglass, which means foreign soldiers. The Galloglass, the O'Sheans, and each of the different Irish chieftains tended to have a family or a little tribe in Scotland that were their traditional Galloglass. Are you familiar with the word Galloglass? No? Galloglass, mercenary soldiers. But they were extraordinary. we should probably do Galloglass sometimes. Yeah, Óglaigh. The name for the Óglaigh is a soldier in the Irish language, and the Irish Army is today Óglaigh na hÉireann is the official Irish Army. And guess what it is also means? It is the official name for the IRA. That's what they call them, Óglaigh na hÉireann. So when they would have a little parade, or if they sometimes put on the thing and they do, when the war was going on, you'd hear the commands, Óglaigh, Ara, like, so, attention, Ara, and so that they address themselves in Óglaigh. But Gal means foreigners, and that's where the word Galway comes from. So whatever, and Dún na Gal is the fort of the foreigners. So you see that quite a bit in Ireland. But Óglaigh, Galloglass, were the foreigners. So the Irish would have been like the Óglaigh, the Galloglass, the mercenaries, the fighting, very highly prized in Spain. And they probably were what gave that backbone, that sort of fighting spirit to a little group.
Who were the mercenaries for the Galloglass then?
No, I think they were the top of the food chain, I think, as far as that was concerned. And you know when you're reading about the Desmond Rebellion recently, and Eleanor, they were the last ones with him. They were the last with the Earl of Desmond when he was cornered, and he was literally in a cave, and he was and the last couple of guys to die with them were the Galloglass, the O'Sheans. Incredibly loyal they were. That was what they did, and an extraordinary breed of, and they to right down into relatively modern times, they still use the old battle axe. They still win in a battle with an axe. They weren't going to. If they hit you, well, you didn't wound you. They cut you in half. So they swung that, and they were huge. They were just like Clydesdales, So the Irish fighting man was akin to the Irish bloodhound. They were like bred to that, if you like, and different families literally did that. They bred them for that. Now, so that would have been probably in modern times the first real glue between Spain and Ireland, because they were a very essential commodity to any up and coming ruler or prince.
So how many of them were gladiators in Rome now?
I don't know of any at all. I'm sure that Hollywood would probably make great use of that. We don't know. The Romans never brought Irish prisoners. They did bring British prisoners.
They did bring
Which
the
you
games
said they
everywhere they
conquered
went.
Iberia.
Pardon?
They brought the games everywhere there was a Roman outpost. They would bring the games.
Yeah.
They probably had games in Britain.
Yeah, they did, but okay.
But
They
I was
did.
thinking
But,
because the Romans had Iberia for a while, right?
yeah, but they tended to only bring in, that's why it had to be always expanding. They ran out of slaves and gladiators pretty quickly, so yeah, that's why they had to be always sort of, it's like a fire, they had needed new wood. But no, there's no tradition of Roman gladiators games like that. You've got to go way back much prior to Roman times for that. And that was the Taunton Games, which predated the Olympic Games by 2,000 years.
Wow.
At least, if not longer. And a lot of the mythology of Greece is now starting to be realized that had Irish connections. There's even English scholars are now giving serious consideration to the idea that when Plato wrote about Atlantis, and in his, half of what he wrote was drawn from real, and the other half was imaginary because he wanted to build this republic, this idea. But he wrote in 360 AD or BC rather. There's a lot of people who believe, because they said it was 300 miles long and 200 miles wide, described it exactly with a plain in the middle and open to the sea, and the only thing that doesn't fit is that he says that it was wiped out by a flood in one day, which may be allegorical for something else. Culturally we don't quite know.